This is a Sirius XM Golf original.
It's rare that you interview someone who wants to tell you about the worst moment in their life.
In 1999, Mark Hyman wrote a profile about Alan Miller in Sports Illustrated.
It's been years since I've read the story. I went back and read it recently, and there was one paragraph that really brought it all back to me. I'd like to read part of it to you. Alone in the small spare bedroom, Miller placed a plastic bag over his head and waited to lose consciousness. All that happened was my face got sweaty, he says. Next, he calmly removed a light bulb from a lamp and prepared to stick his finger into the live socket. If that didn't kill him, Miller says, he planned to throw the radio, plugged in, into the bathtub, jump in, and get it over with real quick. It's often said that people with substance abuse problems have to hit rock bottom before they can pull their lives together. And I think that partly explains what happened to Alan. He really had to lose everything in order to realize that there was a way back.
I've been to Bob Hope's house for dinner, and I've taken food off trays in hotel hallways of people that didn't eat all their food because I didn't have any money. So, I've gone from both ends. Once you hit rock bottom, there's no way else but up.
This is Worth, the Alan Miller story. I'm David Marr. On a crisp December morning in upstate New York, Alan Miller is looking through a trove of memorabilia from his life in golf.
All this was in the basement, in a box.
A plaque from the 1971 Walker Cup.
I didn't even realize I even had this.
A watch he received from his only PGA Tour victory.
In those days, in 1975, that was a nice watch.
A pair of crystal goblets from the 1975 Masters.
Never used them, just look at them.
For Miller, the experiences behind these memories have given him wisdom to pass on to his own students and to help him understand his own journey.
If you're not going to play golf, why are you playing? That was part of what brought me down to a point that we'll talk about later.
Miller grew up in Pensacola, Florida, and lived across the street from a tennis facility. He showed enough promise to win the 11 and under city title, but the course of his life changed dramatically one fateful day while he practiced with an instructor, Pop Turner.
And he used to hit volleys with me over there, but he also would go after he'd hit tennis balls, he'd go over in the park and hit some golf balls. And I'd kind of walk over with Pop, and he'd say, here, take the club, and try to hit it a few times. And he gave me some golf balls, and I brought them home, and my dad said, well, you want to try this? I said, yeah, I'd like to try it.
Miller's dad, a prominent urologist, enrolled his son in a junior clinic held at a public golf course and taught by head professional Gordy Glens.
Everybody hit a few shots, and Gordy went over and told my dad, he said, your kid's got a lot of natural ability. Why don't you bring him in and start getting him some private lessons? So I started taking private lessons from Gordy.
As Miller's game progressed, he developed a friendship with Downing Gray, who finished second in the 1962 U.S. Amateur and played in the Masters 7 times.
I adopted him, if you will, on the golf course. And that involved, getting him into tournaments to help his growth and introduce him to some of the other upper players and just, anything I could do to help him. That's all.
He was giving me his wisdom, took me under his wing and made sure that I knew what to do, not only who to meet, but knew what to do, and guided me along through amateur golf.
He proved that he was well worth the effort. He rose right up to the top of the list.
In high school, Miller won the state individual title. At age 16, he set his sights on an even loftier goal, to play on the PGA Tour. Miller's ambition carried a heavy burden, the weight of his father's expectations.
It had always been that way. My dad was a doctor, and he was a perfectionist, which I'm a perfectionist also. But he was hardcore that you can't make mistakes, because doctors can't make mistakes. You make a mistake in the surgery, you're going to kill somebody. I'll never forget as a kid, I said one day, he was trying to help me with something. I said, well, everybody's entitled to make a mistake. And he said, but you're not. So that kind of etched in my memory as I went along in life.
Miller, like any young boy, wanted desperately to please his father. Consequently, his self-worth became almost entirely dependent on what he shot.
Everything you do, you got to perform. Why are you messing up? You can't do that. You should be playing better. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And it got to the point where it was self-internalized, something must be wrong with me. But for him, he didn't mean anything by it, but I took it the wrong way, not knowing it, and it just ate at me.
Downing Gray witnessed the tension between Miller and his father.
He was almost like he was inside of Alan. He just was totally involved with his game and how he grew it.
He was, get this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Just do it. Get it done. It takes time. You got to work at it.
Alan and I discussed it, just the two of us. I didn't think it was my place to talk down his father. I think it was more to tell him just to bite his lip and go ahead and then live through it. Maybe things would change as he went down the road.
In the fall of 1967, Miller enrolled in the University of Georgia. Miles away from home, he still couldn't escape the reach of his father's influence.
My dad was big into fraternities. He wanted to be a fraternity man. So I went to Georgia and I went through the quote, rush system. Not because I wanted to, because he wanted me to. And I got turned down by every fraternity to be, probably because I'm shy and, whatever. Okay, I wasn't a party animal. And I got turned down, and I'll never remember going back to the dorm, and I started crying. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why don't they want me? So I got determined at that point, well, I'm just going to be a Gamma Delta Iota, which means a GD independent. I'm not going to be in a fraternity, but I'm going to be to show you guys that I don't need you to be able to be successful in college.
Miller became the number one player on Georgia's golf team each of the next 3 years. In 1968, he was named All-America and finished 8th in the U.S. Amateur, which earned him an invitation to the Masters. To that point, Miller played a roundhouse hook, a notoriously unreliable shot, particularly under pressure, which forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth.
Well, I knew I couldn't get any better hitting that big roundhouse hook and live in a constant fear. And if I have to play fearful golf the rest of my life, I'm going to quit, because this is ridiculous. I'm not going to go through life fearful of everything I do.
Miller decided to rebuild his swing. 3 instructors came to mind: Byron Nelson, who once won 18 tournaments in a single season, including 11 in a row, Claude Harmon, the 1948 Masters champion, and Bob Toski, who led the PGA Tour money list in 1954. Miller's father, ever eager to exert his influence, called the 3 men.
First 2 people he called, both of them said, well, I'm very busy. I've got other things I'm doing other things. I finally got to the 3rd one, which was Bob Toski. And he called Bob Toski and he gave him the same line. Oh, I'm very busy. I can't help you. My dad said, wait a minute. I just called 2 named teachers that are great players that my sons wants to be able to work with. And both of them just gave me the same line you're giving me right now. He said, well, tell me a little more about your son. He said, well, he's going to play in the Masters in 6 months. What? Get him on the next plane down here.
Three days later, Miller flew to Miami to see Toski.
And Bob Toski met me on the driving range at 8 o'clock the next morning. And it was just me and Bob Toski. And I had taken some movies with me, because in those days we didn't have videotapes. I took some movies that I had on my swing. I said, would you like to see something? Nope, let's just get out here and hit a couple balls. I'll watch you hit 5 balls, and I'll know what you need to do. So I walked out the range, I hit 5 balls. He looks at me and says, well, Alan, you got good hand-eye coordination, you got good rhythm, let's get to work. From that moment on, for the next 2 days, I changed my entire golf swing. And I went from hitting a roundhouse hook to hitting it straight or a slight fade left to right.
More than half a century later, the 97-year-old Bob Toski can still recall that lesson.
There's always some doubt when a player comes to a teacher about making change, because we are creatures of habit. Alan was a wonderful student, good listener, and he finally understood what I was trying to get across was, and he had very few things to try to improve on.
The last thing he told me is he got ready to take me to the airport. He said, Alan, you're going to go back to the University of Georgia. You've totally changed your swing in 2 days. All these guys on your team and people you're around up there are going to say, let's go play. And you're going to have to say to them, no, I'm going to go to the range. I want you to hit all the balls you can hit every day. Because if you go back and you play every day when you go back and don't stay on the range enough, you're going to go right back to doing what you did before you got here, because your muscles haven't had time to develop any muscle memory. He said, that's going to be tough, because you're going to get back there and say, what, are you just a range rat? All you do is hit balls anymore. You don't even play golf anymore. He said, Alan, I want you to remember one thing. Their dream is not as big as your dream. Your dream is to go from here today, be a top amateur, and get on the PGA Tour. Their dream is just to be on the golf team and go to the parties at the fraternity house, okay? Your dream's a lot bigger. And if you do that, Alan, I promise you, you will become a great ball striker.
Miller didn't stray from Toski's advice. Danny Yates, Miller's former teammate at Georgia, witnessed his devotion.
Alan was a little more disciplined than the rest of us. He was focused on golf. He wasn't a goody-goody or a nerd, but he worked hard at it. And some of us were more worried about partying and girls and stuff, which obviously showed up in our play. But I remember something he used to always say, you got to build a swing that works when it works and works when it doesn't work. And that kind of was a puzzle to me.
Although Miller missed the cut at the 1969 Masters, he established himself as one of the premier amateurs in the country over the next 2 years. Joe Inman, a three-time NCAA All-America, competed against Miller at Wake Forest.
Well, he beat my ass a lot. I lost to him in the finals of the Transmiss. I finished second to him at the Dogwood. What a talent. Magnificent.
Miller won the prestigious Trans-Mississippi 3 years in a row. In 1970, he won the Canadian Amateur by 10 shots.
And it's the only national championship, quote, quote, that I ever won. But that particular year, I won like 5 or 6 major amateur tournaments in that 70 season. And that's when Lanny Watkins and I were co-number 1 amateurs in America.
Miller punctuated his amateur career in the 1969 Walker Cup.
I was sitting on the 17th tee, and Billy Joe Patton, who almost won the Masters in amateur, he was our captain. He came up to me and he grabbed my leg. He had a big claw grip. He grabbed my leg and said, Miller, we got to have this point.
The whole Walker Cup match may very well ride on it.
And then I got up and down. I flailed to a little bit to the right on 17, which is a par 3, and then I got up and down from the right of the green on 18. But it was like, oh my God, the captain, it's in my hands. And I was able to pull it off.
And Alan Miller wins on the last green by 1 hole. The United States lead 9-7.
In the fall of 1971, Miller earned his PGA Tour card at the annual qualifying school in Florida on the strength of the lowest score of the 108-hole tournament, a 67 in the 5th round.
And that put me like 3rd or 4th place. It didn't matter if I finished 15th or 2nd. It didn't matter. It didn't do you any more good. So the last round was freelance. I don't know, it should have been 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I don't even know. Could have shot 86 and still got my card. And that's all that mattered in those days.
The class of rookies included future Hall of Fame members Tom Watson, Lanny Watkins, and David Graham.
We all went through the school together, so historically it's been called the greatest school ever.
After the tournament, Miller celebrated with a friend at a hotel in Palm Beach.
Had a couple pops, came back, and that was about it. And we didn't have time. I left from there and went to a tournament in Savannah, Georgia right after that.
Miller had realized his childhood dream. It would soon become a nightmare. This is Worth, the Alan Miller story. I'm David Marr. After a heralded amateur career, Alan Miller began his rookie season on the PGA Tour in January of 1972. Many considered him to be a can't-miss star. Fellow rookie Lanny Watkins, who competed against Miller in college, believed his game was tailor-made for the tour.
Nobody has more respect for his playing ability than I did, because I saw it up close and personal. He could go. He drove it straight. He had enough length. He was a beautiful iron player, worked the ball both ways, and was a very good putter. Wasn't afraid to win, very competitive.
But Miller didn't feel that way. As a boy, he looked up to Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus. Now he struggled to see them simply as peers.
haven't idolized him, it's kind of like walking in a room of presidents or whatever, and you go, oh my God, well, how did he ever get here? Do I belong here or whatever?
Naturally, Miller began to tinker with his game.
I just made some adjustments that I shouldn't have made with the dream of hitting it further, and I shouldn't have done that.
Eventually, Miller went back to his old swing, but his confidence had been frayed even further. In his first 5 seasons on tour, he never finished higher than 63rd on the money list. Twice, he finished 99th, which inspired his caddy to give him a playful but derisive nickname, Black 99.
He said, Miller, you're always 99th on the money list. You're just about as good as you can get. And that was his joke. But again, some days that, you don't know what it takes when you're sleeping. He kept saying 99. Why am I 99? Only 99th on the money. He meant it in a fun way, and I loved him to death. But why are they saying that? That's belittling to some degree.
Miller's play prompted a familiar refrain from his father.
Why aren't you winning? Why aren't you winning? Why aren't you winning? Why don't you play better? Well, I'm trying to play better. So what's holding you back? What was the urge to try to satisfy somebody more than anything else?
Miller's urge to please others, especially his father, had been cultivated from an early age. Consequently, his self-worth was directly tied to what he shot each round. Week after week, there was more than just a paycheck riding on Miller's performance. The burden became too much to bear. He turned to alcohol to dull the pain.
If you feel self-belittled for the day, you didn't do as well as you want to, what are you going to do about it? Well, you try to kill the pain. You don't have to think about it. But I didn't drink all day long every day. It was just to kill the pain later in the evening to be able to survive, to go out and do it again the next day. Not drink again, to go out and play or whatever, to go out amongst a crowd that I wasn't comfortable with.
Alcohol also served a purpose for Miller socially. Mark Hyman documented his struggles in a profile for Sports Illustrated.
Now, Alan's a very quiet person, a very humble person. In social situations, he's not always the most comfortable. That's what he told me. Alcohol was something that helped him deal with that.
Because you're out amongst people, you're having to go to pro-am parties. If you have to do something you don't want to do, what are you going to do? You're going to either avoid it or you're going to get the courage to do it. And if you can't get it, you might drug up to do it.
Joe Inman competed against Miller on tour.
He's a thinker, and he just doesn't project into groups, and he just kind of stays by himself.
It's like, I know I can hit the shot. You want to watch me? You're welcome to come over here. I'll be by myself. On the range, I always went to the opposite end of all the players. I'd rather be alone.
I can take my clothes off in Times Square totally sober. I don't need to be drunk. I don't feel social stress. Alan felt social stress. He was just more of an introvert, and to get into social situations, he just felt like he had to drink.
Early in 1974, Miller missed the cut in 6 out of 9 tournaments, but he believed that he had rediscovered the swing he had built with Bob Toski and was on the verge of a breakthrough. Before the first round of the Tallahassee Open, he expressed his confidence to a local reporter.
I had a rapport with him because I'd known him for junior golf because he's from a small town near Tallahassee. And he said, who do you think can win this week? And I said, me. Because I'm playing good. I'm hitting good. Well, but you haven't done anything lately. I said, it doesn't matter. You hit it good and you putt and you make some putts, anybody can win.
Miller held the outright lead through each of the first 3 rounds. But on the final day, the outcome was in doubt as he prepared to play his 3rd shot on the par 5 17th hole. Short-sided from a sandy lie. With out of bounds beyond the green, Miller went for broke.
But I didn't look at it as a risk. I said, I got to try this. I got to hit this shot. If I don't pull it off, so what? I'm not going to win anyway. But if I do pull it off, I can win. I didn't look at it as a risk. I said, I'm really good at this shot.
With no margin for error, Miller's flop shot landed on the edge of the green and settled within 6 inches of the hole. The shot was later featured in a book titled Golf's Greatest Shots by the World's Greatest Players. His tap-in birdie proved to be the difference. After years of thinking like a, quote, non-winner and feeling like he didn't belong, Miller captured his first and only PGA Tour title.
It was like, okay, everybody wanted me to win. Well, I finally got it done. I finally did it. You can't miss. It finally didn't miss.
Miller described the experience in an article he wrote for Golf World magazine. How does it feel? How did those guys feel when they came back from the moon, he wrote. It's a hell of a feeling. It's like the whole world is off my back. Almost the whole world.
When I won the tournament, obviously I'm excited. I call home 4 hours away, and I say, I got it, I did it. And the first thing that came, good job. And the second thing that came out of my dad's mouth was, now show him you can do it again. Well, that was about as degrading as comment at that moment I could have gotten. Now show him you can do it again. Not, congratulations, we're proud of you, good job. Now show him you can do it again. Like, that's, winning's not good enough. Now you got to do a little even better than that. And that became a big issue internally that I wasn't aware of at the moment, but it became part of the issue later. Well, you're not good enough, whatever.
Miller's victory earned him an invitation to the 1975 Masters.
Thursday, day one. Bright, brisk, and promising to become breezy.
It was a dream week. He opened with 68 and trailed by 1.
At the end of the first round, Nicklaus leads Alan Miller and Jack Nicklaus by a shot.
In the second round, he was paired with 7-time major champion Sam Snead. On Sunday, he eagled the 14th hole to earn a pair of crystal goblets. As Miller plucked his ball out of the hole, CBS broadcaster Jack Whitaker stood up in his tower and applauded. Life was good. And it got better in 1977 when he met Cindy Kessler, a freshman on the University of Miami golf team.
Every Friday, the men's and women's golf team at the University of Miami, we would have skins game at the Biltmore. And Friday night, we would go to the Rat. And this guy was at the bar, and he had $100 bills, and people from Buffalo are really good at drinking. And I'm not an idiot, so the guy with the $100 bills was soon my best friend, right? He said, my buddy Alan Miller is coming to play at Doral, and I'm going to caddy for him, and I'll get you a free ticket. So I took the free ticket, and I went to watch Alan Miller play golf.
Never forget, I was walking up the 10th fairway at Doral, and I see this girl walking up. She's kind of cute, but that's, I'm playing the tour, and I'm busy right now.
And I specifically remember, the Blue Monster, him playing number 10 and dogleg left around the corner and watching this guy swing, thinking to myself, does anyone swing that smooth? Holy cow.
But she followed me around, and then after that, I said, you want me to help you with the game a little bit?
And, that southern drawl, he said, you want some help with your swing? So afterwards, I'm like, yeah, of course I do. And he gave me a lesson on the range. And as Alan was helping me, I remember Ben Crenshaw walking by and going, oh, Alan, who you helping? Kind of teasing him.
And every year I'd go back to Doral. She'd come out and watch when we go out to dinner. We'd always go over to Monero's restaurant, steakhouse, and have dinner.
And we became golf buddies.
Golf buddies, and that parlayed in their friendship.
And the way he treated me when he tried to help me when we were just buddies, it was so nice that I respected him. Plus, he knew how to hit the ball he was like an artist. So you respected his knowledge, and that just drew you to him.
Like Miller, Kessler dreamed of competing against the best players in the world from an early age. In college, she led Miami to back-to-back national championships. And in 1979, she earned her LPGA Tour card. While she and Miller crisscrossed the country, they never really dated, Kessler said.
There was no internet. There were no cell phones. I would read Golf World to see how he did, and he would read Golf World to see how I did. And once in a while, I'd call his house and ask his mom where he was. It was just weird.
In the spring of 1981, after Kessler missed the cut in an LPGA event, she flew overnight to caddy for Miller in the Greensboro Open. As they sat in a friend's condo before the tournament began, Kessler cornered Miller.
We had talked, would you ever get married? Yeah, and I said, well, what the heck, are we ever going to get married? And he goes, why, do you want to get married? I go, well, yeah, let's get married, or something like that. But basically it was me, because he's so shy and quiet, I thought, this guy's never going to ask me to get married. I got to do everything here.
I said, means you want to get married? She said, yeah. I said, okay, well, let's get married. It was just that quick. And the funny thing was, that was April Fool's Day coming up. So we told everybody we were getting married on April Fool's Day, and we announced it to Golf World in the press room at the Greensboro Open.
Golf World published a photo of the happy couple during the tournament, with Miller's left arm warmly wrapped around Kessler's shoulder while she dutifully held the flagstick. There they stood, side by side, not an inch between them. Their eyes were fixed on a little white ball in the distance, towards a future they couldn't possibly fathom, sparked by a connection they couldn't possibly deny.
I knew how good he was and how smart he was. And he knew how bad I wanted to be good. I'm tearing up. And I think it was both of us, the burn, the internal burn, and our love for the game and believing in each other. I think that's what it was.
Kessler and Miller were opposites in seemingly every way, and in one important way. She believed in him more than he believed in himself, and she supported him in a way that his father never would.
My father told me I could do anything. He believed in me more than anybody. Whereas Alan's father, I don't think Alan was ever good enough. That's probably why we like each other.
Miller's close friend and agent sensed this essential element and delivered a fateful message to Kessler before she married Miller.
You're going to save this guy's life. I was like, what? He goes, yeah, you're going to save this guy's life. Because I so much believed in him. And I knew he was just sad.
When you try your best, but you don't succeed. When you get what you want, but not what you need. When you feel so tired, but you can't sleep. Stuck in reverse.
This is Worth, the Alan Miller story. I'm David Marr. By 1983, Alan Miller had played on the PGA Tour for 12 years. He was, by his own estimation, in the 0.1% of all golfers in the world. But he didn't consider himself a success. Instead, his self-worth was based on the expectations heaped on him by his father at an early age.
All the years of, it's not good enough, you can't make a mistake, how come you aren't winning, why'd you play so bad, all that kind of stuff just builds up.
It became debilitating, especially when it mattered most.
It was the third round that was always a problem. Why? Because now you got a chance to try to win and prove that you're good enough. And what'd you do? You screwed up.
CBS Sports presents the 1983 Doral Eastern Open.
In the 1983 Doral Eastern Open, Miller opened with rounds of 70-65 to take the 36-hole lead.
It's been a long time since I've led a golf tournament, and I was just tickled to make the cut for a change because I haven't made a cut this year.
A victory could have renewed his career, but the night before the third round, Miller's wife said he, quote, got bombed at dinner.
I was horrified. I was horrified that night. This is like a blessing. We're finally leading a tournament. Would you sit there and get drunk? And he got so drunk he couldn't walk.
Well, again, that's a nighttime thing, just a big deal. But I found the next morning. They may think you weren't, but I know I was.
Alan Miller, about 200 yards away. Ooh, that hit some lady. I'm sure it did.
The next day, Miller shot 73 and fell out of contention.
And to be honest with you, I can't believe he shot 73. I would have shot 90. 73 was pretty freaking good for as hammered as he was.
After Cindy lost her LPGA Tour card in 1981, she devoted herself to Alan's game.
Alan Miller, a self-confessed worst putter on the tour, has revamped his style with help from his wife, Cindy.
She believed that they were working together to play for opportunities like the one he had at Doral. That fateful Friday night told her otherwise.
When he got hammered that night, that, to me, signified he really doesn't want to be in the limelight. He was trying to do something, probably, that he didn't want to do. And I believe that night he was scared to death.
Miller says he drank that night to kill the pain, but he didn't know why the pain was there.
That's what I had to find out.
He didn't know how to, though. At least not yet. In 1985, Miller lost his card. In his final event, he asked the tournament volunteers to post a message on the manual scoreboard.
Thanks for the memories, now give me a job. That was the scary part. What are you going to do next?
Half-heartedly, Miller went to PGA Tour qualifying school that fall.
I just did it because I needed to. I didn't want anybody to say you gave up. Again, what are other people going to think? But I knew I wasn't going to make it and I didn't care.
He said, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, okay, what are we going to do?
He looked for work in Pensacola, Florida, where he lived with Cindy and their children.
He majored in insurance, and he took an exam or some kind of an exam at an insurance company in Pensacola. And they said, you are not a salesman. We do not want you. Oh, really? Yeah. Surprise, surprise. And the pro at Pensacola Country Club didn't want him there either. So it's not like you got all kinds of arms open.
Desperate, Cindy contacted someone who owned an indoor driving range in Buffalo, New York, where she grew up.
And I said, hey, Alan's not going to play anymore. Can we come up and teach golf? And he said, sure.
Mark Hyman documented this transition in a profile for Sports Illustrated.
That was a low point for him. I mean, you can imagine going from, thinking that you're going to win a master's in your career to teaching at a range in Buffalo, New York.
Half the people don't know who he is, nor do they care. So we go from having dinner at Bob Hope's house to teaching golf at a public driving range in Buffalo, New York, starting every year at 0, and nobody caring who you are.
Then they start questioning what you're teaching because, that's not what I heard this guy say. I heard that on TV, and this guy said to do that, and they're telling me something different. Go ahead, I don't care. When's the last time you played in the Masters? Oh. And in my day, the lowest rung on this ladder in golf was a teaching pro at a driving range. That was as low as you could go. Who went to the driving ranges? Only people that couldn't afford to go play golf at the public course or the private country clubs. It was a place for the lowrents to hang out. That's part of what brought me down, and which goes back to the disappointment. You're not winning. Can't make a mistake. Well, if hadn't made the mistakes, I would have won more. If I had won more, I wouldn't be here in the first place. All that stuff parlays.
Over time, Miller says he became even more depressed.
We're teaching in a cement hole in the winter, and I know he's drinking. He's sneaking drinking. It's not good. And soon we have 3 kids to feed. So we lived like that for probably 6 years, 7 years. It was hard, and it's hard to have a smile on your face all the time, and sometimes you just want to crawl in a hole and die.
By the mid-90s, Miller's 3 children were old enough to know that their dad had a problem. His oldest child, Kelly.
I was in gymnastics. A friend of mine and all would also go. So our parents would swap who would take them. There would be times when my dad would take us, like he would take us and he would be fine. And then he'd pick us up an hour later and he'd be acting all weird. He just acted completely different. And it was like an hour. Thinking back on it, wow, did he just totally go drink a lot?
His son, Jamie.
I remember him sneaking around, right? And you wouldn't know what he's doing. And I remember hiding in the club repair area. So I'd be, why is he always going in there? I got to see what he's doing. And he went in there and there was a bottle hidden. He went in and I remember seeing him, drinking out of it and then hiding it again and stashing it behind the stuff. And I remember being like, I don't know what that is, but that's bad.
His youngest child, Matt.
I remember being scared, but not really understanding what was going on. When it was really bad, I was in elementary school. I was 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, so that what I can remember. I just didn't understand. I just knew that there was something wrong with Dad.
It wasn't the fact that he was drinking all the time. I think he could only have 1 or 2 drinks, like he was allergic to it or something. I mean, it wasn't like he was sitting there drinking. You didn't even know when he was drinking. It was weird, but you could tell because my parents were both alcoholics. I mean, once you're a child of an alcoholic or you're married to one, you have, radar, warning, warning, warning. I mean, And it was just like, oh God, here we go again. And I was like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I love you, but go away. Go.
In February of 1996, Miller left his family and drove to his mother's home in Florida. His depression intensified. You're worthless, he told himself. He rarely left his bedroom.
I'm in a bedroom all by myself thinking about how bad things were and what have I done and where am I at.
Then, on February 21st, Miller decided he'd never come out. Mark Hyman documented the events of that day in a profile for Sports Illustrated.
Alone in the small spare bedroom, Miller placed a plastic bag over his head and waited to lose consciousness. All that happened was my face got sweaty, he says. Next, he calmly removed a light bulb from a lamp and prepared to stick his finger into the live socket. If that didn't kill him, Miller says, he planned to throw the radio plugged in into the bathtub, jump in, and get it over with real quick.
But before Miller could put his finger in the socket, his sister came into the room. Hours later, he was admitted into a psychiatric hospital.
I think it was his sister said that we have Baker acted him and he's in a mental hospital, that he tried to take his own life. I was afraid, I don't want him to kill himself. I wanted him to go to a hospital and get better. Something's got to give. Something's got to get better.
Doctors diagnosed Miller with depression. He was prescribed medication and attended daily classes for a month.
That's when I realized that the situation was I had control. I could control it. And if I didn't have any, I eliminate the pain, don't have to drink, or you don't have to do anything, drink drugs or whatever it might be, whatever somebody's problem is. So as soon as I realized what was going on, the pain went away.
The source of his pain, Miller learned, was the expectations his father had placed on him as a young boy. Expectations that he internalized and weaponized against himself.
Once I realized that if I forgave my dad for doing that kind of stuff, which he had no intentions in doing, I'm not to knock him because he learned to do it. He was taught the same way, and he was trying to do the best he could. I just said, I don't have a reason to be depressed.
Forgiveness for his father who had passed away years earlier and for himself allowed Miller to put down the pain that he had carried for so long. But that realization wasn't an instant cure in his battle with alcoholism and depression. Something his family discovered when he returned home.
He just didn't seem right. Just depressed. Didn't talk, walk around like eggshells. It was like you were waiting for him to do it again.
In May of 1996, less than 3 months after he attempted suicide on his son Matt's birthday, Miller relapsed the day before his son Jamie's birthday.
There were presents in his car for my birthday. We were going to have a party at the house, and he left. We don't know where he is. No idea. I remember my mom calling the cops. Then the next day, it was like after 24 hours, they can do an APB, whatever the hell they do, and they couldn't find him. Obviously canceled the party, and I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm speculating. Maybe a day or two later, they found him at a hotel, hammered, right?
Miller checked himself in to a New York hospital to receive treatment for his drinking.
I felt some symptoms coming back. So I got up and went down to the hospital and said, you got to let me in. You got to protect me from me.
With her husband in a treatment facility and 3 children depending on her at home, Cindy says she was in survival mode. But she wasn't alone. While she gave lessons all day, she relied on her daughter Kelly to run her side business, an embroidery and sewing shop.
Probably was working 30 hours a week there after school and then on the weekends. Part of me enjoyed it, but some of it was also, sometimes I just want to be a kid. I don't want to go sew because you have orders to come in. Like, I just want to go play with my friends.
Her youngest son, Matt, also helped.
I wanted to make sure that laundry was always put away, done when she got home, and dishes were done, and that she didn't have to have anything to do because she was just, there was so much going on that you could just see the pain and the struggle.
After a month, Miller returned home. His wife, who had been pushed to the brink while he was gone, desperately needed his help. But Miller was still in no position to step up.
This guy's laying on the couch in the house and I'm working, sewing shirts, giving lessons, he has no job, nor is he getting up to get a job. He's not doing anything. And this is what I have to, and we owed like $50,000, $60,000 in credit card bills. I mean, you have no idea. At this point, I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to hear about what your troubles are because I'm done. I'm done. You're going to sit here on the couch and feel bad? I'm tired. I mean, that's kind of how I felt. So then I filed for divorce because I'm like, he could care less about anything.
What happened next has become a well-told story in the Miller household.
When they almost got a divorce, what I remember stopping it was they were at their court hearing and my dad gave her a copy of Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You.
And he said, look, if this is really what you want, I'll sign whatever you want. But I don't want you to sign it today. I want you to wait.
The way my mind processed it, that's what stopped it. And that she said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to fight for all that we can.
They came back and said they weren't going to get divorced.
And whether that story is 100% accurate, that's how I remember it. So
I don't remember that part, no, but I probably did. I remember the song. I remember saying, what is that song? And that's the way I felt.
I said, the only reason I filed for divorce is because you got to get better. I can't put up with this. I wouldn't have filed for divorce because I still love you. I said, you want to rip the papers up? Alan goes, yeah, let's rip the papers up.
Throw the papers out. And then we moved on.
Give up on you if you won't give up on me. I can't live without you. I hope that you feel the same about me.
This is Worth, the Alan Miller story. I'm David Marr. For years, Cindy Miller pleaded with her husband to get better. Gradually, he did. In July of 1996, Alan Miller gave up alcohol for good.
He said, once I found out why I did it, I don't need to do it anymore.
Miller relied on alcohol to dull the pain of failing to live up to other people's perceived expectations, most notably his own father. But through therapy and personal reflection, Miller learned to prioritize his own thoughts.
You hear that all the time. Always listen to what's the other person's opinion. Screw the other person. They're not living inside you.
By looking within, Miller overcame his battle with alcoholism.
It's not the alcohol, it's the problem, Alan. It's you got issues with some of the things in the past, and we'll deal with them, and you won't have any. You're killing the pain with the alcohol, because that's where the pain is. You put the umbrella up, we can take the umbrella down. We don't have any pain anymore. So I believe in that 100%, and the pain is gone.
That newfound perspective allowed Miller, at long last, to find peace with himself and with what he achieved on the PGA Tour.
I had a pretty daggone good career, but it wasn't what everybody else wanted. It wasn't winning tournaments. It wasn't winning a lot of tournaments. It wasn't being leading money winners or whatever. What's it worth to you? Well, today it's worth a lot more to me than it was back then.
Miller's hard-earned wisdom yielded a precious gift, a relationship with his golf-crazed son that he never had with his own father.
Anytime he hit a bad shot or a good shot, I did not change my facial expression or emotion. I purposely didn't change. Rather than reacting, oh, that's a bad shot. Oh, what a disappointment that is. Or a great shot. Go, Jamie. It was always, okay. It was hard work, but conscious effort to stay steady with the emotions and everything else, because I knew the emotional hurt it could give you.
Good or bad, I think my dad always took away the negative of how his dad was to him. It was always very tough on him about that. I would say to the counter, my dad was almost too easy. He didn't really push me, which ultimately allowed me to push myself, which is probably a good thing. But I think he was constantly worried about making me feel what his dad made him feel.
Miller displayed the same grace with his wife in her bid to return to professional golf, more than 20 years after she lost her card on the LPGA Tour.
Alan was all about me pursuing my dream, defeating my demons. Redemption.
In 2005, she was second on the Legends Tour money list, highlighted by a runner-up finish.
What's the moral of the story? I defeated my demons, right? Proved to myself the dream that I had when I was 17 wasn't going to be a nightmare that would haunt me the rest of my life.
Nearly 50 years after they first met, Alan and Cindy Miller are still, quote, golf buddies. Most days, they teach side by side at the Paddock Golf Dome in upstate New York. Despite Alan's disdain for self-promotion, they market themselves as the only married couple in the world who have competed on the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, Senior Tour, and Legends Tour.
And somebody will come for a lesson with me, because most people know me, because I'm, and he'll be sitting over in the corner in his little old man chair, and I see that guy over there with the beard. That guy over there in the beard's played the Masters 5 times. What? Oh, yeah.
Alan has started writing a book. It is, of course, a cautionary tale. The title jumps off the page. I am not what I shoot. It's a message he conveys often to his students.
You're not a bad person because you shoot a bad score. You don't play well in a tournament. Your worth is not based on how you play golf. Your worth is based on what kind of person you are.
On a rare day off from giving lessons, Alan Miller is surrounded by his family in his living room. Conversation comes easy. Photographs of the many memories they've made together fill the walls. The scene is a striking inverse of that fateful day long ago, when Miller sat in an empty room and attempted to take his own life.
Everything that he did to defeat, for lack of a better word, my mom always said when we were kids, to defeat his demons, was for his family. And that's one of the most inspiring things you can do. Now that I have my own, I'm going to do whatever I can for them, just like he did for us.
Would I have loved my dad to have won the Masters? Sure. But like at the end of the day, part of why I'm who I am is because of what we went through. And it wasn't fun and it wasn't good, but you're better for it.
It's just a huge change in how he was to how he is now, you know? And I think that that's amazing to work through all of that and still be able to keep going.
He knows that he's a good person, a loving husband. He knows that he's the best grampy, so much so that I'm a little jealous.
And he's just so loving. That's what made me fall in love with him. He's just really a nice guy.
I just try to be the best person you can be for yourself. If you're a good person for yourself, you'll be good for other people too.
I hope someday we'll sit down together and laugh with each other about these days, these days. All our troubles we'll lay to rest and we'll wish we could come back to these days, these days. These days, these days. These days, these days.
Listen to Worth, the Alan Miller story, anytime on the Sirius XM app and browse the entire catalog of golf originals. Search PGA Tour radio specials on the Sirius XM app. Thanks for listening. I'm David Marr.